Thank you for joining us on Newsweek as we examine some top stories we followed in the course of the week. Hope is rising for organized labor regarding payment of the new minimum wage to workers. Today, we take a look at labor's journey and the arrival at 30,000 naira and the implications going forward. Smugglers are devising new means of bringing in banned items to Nigeria through the closed borders. Criminal minds have been updating their smuggling tactics, with authorities stepping up to it and making arrests. Workers in Nigeria have mixed feelings over the new minimum wage, as increase in the cost of commodities gives fresh cause for worry. TVC News correspondent Joke Adisa has details in this report.
Civil servants discussing the latest agreement between the federal government and organized labor over the new minimum wage. They share a feeling of relief as all industrial disputes relating to the new minimum wage have now been put to rest. But while labor says the struggle was worth it, workers believe there is little to cheer in view of the rising cost of commodities across markets and the introduction of additional tax.
I didn't really see the necessity anyway, because how much was added to the money? It's just a stipend. And before you knew, things get skyrocketed in the market.
You will see the price of things will be going up to match the increment in the salary. When it's matching the increment in salary, then the private organization cannot give or pay that salary.
Okay. If you ask, I will say it is worth it, because usually the cardinal principles of negotiations is give and take.
Indeed, a visit to one of the markets in Abuja reveals prices of commodities have risen. For instance, a bag of local rice, which sold for between 15,000 and 16,000 naira weeks back, now goes for as much as 24,000 naira and more. The price of a bag of beans now stands at 48,000 naira as against 22,000 naira. Many other items are affected, especially edibles. A medium-sized basket of onions moved from 500 naira to 1,200 naira, just as tomatoes and pepper have also gone from 700 naira to 1,500 naira.
Government should just work on price of things in the market, as in probably open border as well.
The government needs to wage in to ensure that prices are regulated so that the quantum of the minimum wage will not be eroded.
Now, the Minister of Labour and Productivity, Chris Ngige, disclosed at this week's Federal Executive Council meeting that the financial implication of the new minimum wage has been approved. Listen to this.
The 07 compartment received 23.2% rise. Grade level 08, 20%. Grade level 09, 19%. Grade level 10 to 14, 16%. Grade level 15 and 17, 14% in the comps, which is the pure civil service structure, and agencies earning the same wages as those in the civil service. You have the Congress and Continuity Compartment 2. They have 25.2% for grade level 7 or equivalent. Grade level 8 or equivalent, 16%. 8 to 14, 16%. 15 to 17 or equivalent, 10.5%.
Now, joining me on Skype to discuss this issue is TVC News correspondent Sharon Ejason, and in the studio I have Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, publisher, Inside Watch Africa. Good to have you both on the program this evening. So let me begin with you now, Sharon. With this adjustment in the wages for civil servants, does this satisfy their immediate needs? What reactions were you able to gather concerning this move?
Well, of course, this does not satisfy their immediate needs. But well, they say half bread is better than none, I guess. But the truth remains that it positive development for the average Nigerian worker that both labor and government were able to reach a compromise as regards what percentage increment should the workers have.
So how does the average worker intend to, well, cater to these other necessities in the face of the rising economic challenges? What are you hearing?
Well, what we should consider is, I am a worker, you're a worker. The salary adjustment scale, according to most employers, is just meant for the public civil servant. But whether everyone likes it or not, every offices or every company, be it multinational, local, organized private sector, are also supposed to adjust the salaries they pay workers because the indices when it comes to the economy has actually risen. So now it's still not so much of a palatable news for the civil servants, but the truth remains that the prices of goods have gone up, value-added tax has gone up, USSD, different taxes here and there coming in different guise. And public servants probably have little palliative, but the private workers also don't have a way out. And this is a government that is fighting corruption. We know that many people are trying to learn how to use their hands or multitask, but the truth remains that the economy needs to be worked upon to ensure that the average worker can actually fend for himself.
Right. Now, Shay, from these developments, what are your thoughts on this so far? Because there are concerns about the rising cost of commodities, even as we have introduced additional tax on items. What are your thoughts?
No, so I believe that we should first of all celebrate the fact that we have this sorted. I'm one person who believes that they took too much time in discussing this, because for me, 30,000 is obviously not the kind of minimum wage that would cater to people's want in Nigeria. But the truth is, so that was what we got. Can we run with that? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to have all the necessary gains from whatever salary you get. Like, I tell people, when I started work as a civil servant, my salary then was total about 90-something naira, and we would normally take 40-something, naira as first pay and the rest. But I could do things. So the thing is, so can we have government do their work, in other words, to ensure that the economy becomes better, so that even the 30,000 naira can start to do the things we want. So I'm not one of those who will say, oh, so let's keep increasing it. We have the 30,000 naira, let us run with it. Let us pray that all of the measures that government is taking now would end up making sure that our lives are better, that the 30,000 naira will have the actual value that it ought to have.
And talking about this change in what you're talking about for the government to, improve the economy, people would say they have a right to have an increase in salary, an upward review in salaries. So, according to the Constitution, it has to be done every 5 years.
Yeah.
But if you say the government needs to improve the economy, do you say that the workers don't have the rights to ask for a review of the salary?
No. Like I said, that's why I'm happy that we're able to get these 30,000. So I'm saying, don't let's be fixated on that, because as it is, if it is the way it is right now, so we get the increase, the rest of the country will go and increase their own prices as well. Now that would never get us any result, because at the end of the day, what you have is, oh, the market people will say, oh, the federal government people now have an increase, so we can increase ours. So that's really not the solution. It is good that increase have been gotten, but can we pray that our government, all of the measures and all the things they're doing right now would amount to us having a better country where prices of goods will naturally go down. The laws of demand and supply would naturally force the price down. Not that they will keep increasing because our salary or the salary of citizens have gone up. And that, for me, would just negate whatever palliative gains that is targeted at by giving them the 30,000 in the first place. So what I'm saying is, yes, it is good that we've gotten that, but the idea of saying, okay, we'll get more, and the rest of the country will keep increasing and all that, at the end of the day, that money, the 30,000 naira, will not amount to anything. So that's what I'm saying. So let us, as we get this, let us look at other measures to make sure that the 30,000 naira, it's kind of worth it at the end of the day.
Right. Now, Sharon, coming back to you now, what do you think, or what do you foresee will be the likely economic implications from this analysis going forward? Do you think perhaps we might be having more rising numbers or more rising numbers in the markets, for instance?
Well, the truth remains that there's still a lot of advocacy to be done by the Nigerian Labour Congress, Trade Union Congress, and other civil society groups, because everybody is saying 30,000 naira is the minimum. But the truth remains that we have so many states that were not even paying the previous national minimum wage pegged at 18,000 naira. So now we're talking about 30,000 naira. How many states will comply? How many states is going to comply with the new consequential adjustment salary increase? These are the questions that need to be answered. Fine, the federal government has agreed, and there's every possibility that they will keep to their promise. While at the state level, there's a lot of challenge, and the average market woman or man needs to be enlightened that because the government says there's an increase doesn't mean that it is automatic. There's still a lot of battles to be fought at the state levels, and many workers are hopeful that their labor leaders or their representative will not disappoint them in ensuring that they have a good negotiation at the end of the day when they start to receive their salary. Probably it will be able to meet up with the current economic realities on ground.
All right, at that point, let's leave it at that for now. Thanks a lot, Sharon Ijason, our correspondent, bringing us up to speed on this development. We'll still have our guest in the studio, Sheyi Adeyemo, to analyze further discussions after this. Still to come, smugglers are devising new means of bringing in the banned items into Nigeria through the closed borders, and criminal minds have been updating their smuggling tactics, with authorities stepping up with it and making arrests. We'll have more in just a moment. In the wake of Nigeria's land border closure, smugglers are deploying means of bringing goods illegally into the country. TVC News correspondent Ifunanya Eze tells us more.
Having impounded many vehicles for duty payment infractions, including this bulletproof vehicle that has no end-user certificate, the controller of the Federal Operations Unit Zone A explains that Customs has now created a platform for defaulting car shop owners and individuals to validate their vehicle duty payment.
80% of the vehicle in the road, they don't have duty. So this is a good opportunity for them to come and pay duty so that they can ride their vehicle freely. Now the federal government has given you an opportunity to come forward willingly and pay your duty. But here we have an issue. The issue is that you have to come with that car. It will be more advantageous for you to bring the car down here. We're not going to arrest you. This is why he comes.
Showcasing further seizures, the command exposed another antics of rice smugglers.
This is an indication of how desperate smugglers have become. Following this land border closure, smugglers are now deploying motorcycles to ferry smuggled rice. The tank of this motorcycle is not carrying fuel, but rice.
By the time we bring the one that are in the bush, you'll be surprised to see how many we have arrested. By the time you empty this one, you may have at least half bag of rice. When you have 2 vehicles, you have 1 bag of rice. When you have 50 vehicles, then which means you have at least 25 bags of rice. So see how they conceal.
He also revealed how more than 5,000 kegs of 25-liter groundnut oil were intercepted in Lagos.
I can tell you that we have 5,107 arrested. You know, we have a border drill. All the border is, I can say, closed. But we cannot just fold our hand and start looking people doing whatever they like. So we concentrate more internally. So with intelligent reports.
Reiterating Customs' determination in fighting smuggling, importers of bulletproof vehicles have been warned to always secure end-user certificates to avoid forfeiture.
The Nigerian Customs in Kano State recently impounded a tanker load of 250 bags of foreign rice along Kano-Dara Road. Now, correspondent Ibrahim Issa tells us more.
It's barely 2 months now since the Nigerian government announced the unexpected closure of its borders to all imported items. As the borders remain closed, Smugglers are now resorting to new ways of performing their illegal act. Oil tankers are now the vehicles of passage used by the brigands. To that effect, the Nigeria Customs Kano Jigar Area Command impounded a tanker load of 250 bags of foreign rice along Daura Kano Road.
The way they loaded this rice, you need to be extremely smart. Because if you look at the tires are not down. They've used the middle compartment fully loaded, the first compartment to the head of the truck, a little bit loaded, the back compartment has nothing inside.
The controller believes storing rice or any other consumables in a tanker like this is dangerous to the health of the consumers. According to him, the new method is threatening.
What is special is the security implications and the health hazards to Nigerians. What are we consuming? Are we consuming AGO, PMS, or are we consuming kerosene, or are we consuming rice?
The intercepted foreign rice stood at a duty-paid value of 5.5 million naira. The Nigeria Customs appeals to Nigerians to desist from patronizing smugglers as the border closure subsides.
Well, I still have in the studio Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, publisher, Inside Watch Africa. Yes, you saw the videos a while ago about rise in tankers, oil tankers, and some in, motorcycles where we have the fuel being kept. But what do you make of these constant smuggling of items despite the land closure?
So I think it's important that we look at this as a people and understand that we all have to support the government to ensure that this is thoroughly dealt with. The truth of the matter is, closure of borders is not something that as a people we should fight. We should encourage them because it's about managing what comes into Nigeria. And as you see, the desperation indicates the fact that the people who surround us obviously benefit more than us from this arrangement. Because what has really continued to happen is that all of these things were banned in Nigeria, but our neighboring countries have continued to allow these things in, not minding all the bilateral, tripartite arrangements and agreements that were signed. Now, let every Nigerian know that as a people, there are all sort of agreements that we have entered to at the level of ECOWAS, at the level of AU, at the level of global level, saying, look, for us to relate, because of our security and our economy, you're expected to do this on our behalf. In other words, if there's a transit good from Nigeria or from Europe into Nigeria, and it goes through Benin, for instance, it is expected that the government of Benin will escort it to the border of Nigeria and hand it over to Nigeria so that Nigeria can do the appropriate for it. But that has not continued to happen. And that is why I believe government of Nigeria have decided to say, look, can we close up the door and maybe look at some of these arrangements again and look at our relationship again so that Nigerians can benefit, because we forget the fact that there are bandits, there is Boko Haram. All of these things are not unconnected to how porous our borders have been. So if the government of the day is saying, can we recheck or manage better our borders, I think it's something that all of us must applaud and pray that it will be properly managed so that Nigerians can benefit more from this arrangement.
In as much as we have a positive analysis to this view, there are concerns now that the border closure might be injurious to the economy in the long run. What do you say about this?
Look, the truth of the matter is, how can you say managing your household will be more injurious? Yes, there will be certain cases of people who have invested. The question is, we're not saying you cannot import things into Nigeria. So you can actually bring things through our ports, through the seaport, through the airport. What we're saying is there's certain things that obviously go through our borders because of the way it's structured, that Nigeria as a country have said we cannot allow this to continue. Let us find a way of ensuring, particularly, and I want to insist, that we have agreed with our neighbors that these are the way things are. Don't forget that because of, for instance, ETLS, the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, there are certain things that will naturally enter into Nigeria, and our neighbors have continued to hide under those schemes to make sure that things that we say we don't want in Nigeria have continued to enter. So, Mr. President, I've said, look, concerning security, concerning our economy, we need to reappraise, to look at, one, our relationship with our neighbors as regards the way we manage our borders. And secondly, let us also say to them, guys, can we come back to the table and look at these more, so that we will not be the one that is at the receiving end all the time. Because the truth of the matter is, it has been injurious to Nigeria over the years, the way our neighbors has dealt with us. And I'm surprised they're now coming out and saying, oh, this is affecting us. The truth of the matter is, what was happening before? Why were they that quiet as much as they were before, compared to the way they are making a lot of noise about the things now?
Well, yes, it's quite a understanding from what you've said so far. But let's look at the price of food items right now, where people are expecting to see a decline in prices. For instance, rice, Nigerian local rice, is still on the high side. So one is expecting to see, okay, if we have closed our borders, why don't we have them in, at a reduced rate, affordable for every Nigerian to have at their table? Why is it on the high side
now,
to have this border closure?
Now let us bring this to perspective. If you remember, Mr. President said agriculture was one of the top things he was going to pursue. And so last year, specifically, or 2 years, they started to do a lot of farming. Now, you don't expect that what they started in 2 or 3 years would certainly be all over the place. So we're still having issues. And that's why I believe Lagos State did what they call the Lekki rice thing in relationship with Kebbi, to ensure that their production, and a lot of other states, Ogun State and the rest of them, are now producing rice to make sure that this staple food of Nigeria, because then if you remember, you and I didn't really used to eat foreign rice as much.
Absolutely.
We used to eat a lot of local rice. So, I mean, the thing is, so it's not just about border closure, it's about talking to ourselves and saying, can we all start to think, do you think it is necessarily that the things that are outside of Nigeria are better than ours? Can we still,
patronize
ourselves in the things we wear, in the things we eat? You'll be shocked at how much harm is going on. A lot of people are Nigerians who have set up warehouses all over the border to make sure that all of these things just gets to those neighboring countries. And they know, because of how large our country is, they would eventually, particularly in the dry season, where every road leads into Nigeria, they will believe that those things will eventually get there. Enough is enough. Let us reappraise the way we manage our borders, so that we will not, with our hands, run Nigeria into comatose. And
so in a final note now, where do you see this leading to? Do you think perhaps our economy will be the best for it? Are we looking at, in economic terms, GDP rate growing, inflation declining? What are your prospects?
Absolutely. Now, look, let me tell you, Mr. President takes this so seriously that he has not just say customs run this. He said armed forces. In fact, it is the office of the national, I think the national something of Nigeria that is running this. Beyond that, customs has also made sure that it is assistant controller generals. This is the first time that they have chosen people of that high-ranking people to manage this. And these are not just assistant controller generals. They are people who have proven themselves over the years, and that is why you see so much effect going on. That's why a lot of cries are out there, because they have decided to do it. And I can tell you that in planning, and one of the most critical things anybody can do is to plan. Whether you're building a house or you're doing anything, in planning, you must make sure you put certain things in place. And I believe one of the things that will help our economy in the long run is what government have decided to do. China closed their borders for 30 years. They're better off of it. Korea closed their borders for 25 years. They're better off of it. Let us close our border for a little while and see how we will fare at the end of the day. All of these countries that have closed their border over time have benefited. Nigeria obviously will benefit, because what you're saying is, Nigerians, let us look inward more than we are doing right now.
And on that final note, I'd like to thank you very much, Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, publisher, Inside Watch Africa. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all for this week's episode of Newsweek. You can follow us on our social media platforms for updates. We are on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram using the handle at TVCNewsNG. You can also get details of all the stories we're reporting on our website, tvcnews.tv. Until the next one, I am Esther Mokwariola. Bye for now.